Hello there.
Hi, everyone.
My name's Joey Medea,
I'm Tanya Medea.
and together we are paranormal researchers, authors, writers, lecturers, and field investigators. And we're very honored to be making this presentation to you for the virtual Van Meter Festival for
Yes, we are.
2020. If things had gone as they were supposed to go, we would have spent last weekend in Point Pleasant, West Virginia on the Ohio River at the Mothman Festival, which we've attended many, many times in the past 11 years. And also then we would be traveling across country, coming to you live in Iowa for the presentation. Very excited to be there with Chad and everyone and see the places in the excellent book. Right, his book with Kevin Nelson is just a brilliant book. But anyhow, we're doing things virtually. So bear with us. We're going to share some images with you and try to make this as comfortable and interesting as possible. The title of our presentation is Interdimensionals and Missing Time in the TNT area of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. These are our own personal experiences. And it all began for us really in 2008. We had been fans of the Mothman Prophecies movie. Just as a movie, Mark Pellington did a great job. The symbolism is wonderful. The performances, Richard Gere, Laura Linney, Will Patton, and the rest is just wonderful. The soundtrack is amazing. I listen to it all the time.
It's just, it's amazing. And, when we first saw the movie, we had never heard of the Mothman. So we, like you said, we were simply just fans of it as a movie.
Right. And so you called me and you said, hey, there happens to be a Mothman museum. It's about 2.5 hours from our house. What do you think? And I said, I really don't want to go 2.5 hours to see a museum about something called the Mothman. But you were pretty persistent.
I, on the other hand, did want to go over 2 hours to see a museum about something called the Mothman.
And it was nothing less than life-changing.
It absolutely was.
And that's really what this presentation is about our encounters, our experiences, and what happened after. So we're going to try to share some images with you. Hopefully it'll go well here. Bear with us. There is the Mothman himself. This is a sculpture done by Bob Roach.
Exactly.
In the early 2000s, I believe. And probably tens of thousands of people.
I was just going to say, how many people have taken their photo with that statue?
A lot of celebrities.
So many.
I know Bobcat Goldthwait was in town a couple years ago. Did the Mothman really look like this? It seems to be a really great amalgam of a lot of descriptions. I've been revisiting John Keel's book, Jeff Wamsley's books, Gray Barker's book, The Silver Bridge, lately for something, project I'm working on. And I think it does a pretty good, it's a pretty good representation in size and shape, the humanoid, but with the giant wings. So we're just going to take you back here for a couple pictures. So we get in the car, we drive the 2.5 hours, and here we're going to go over the bridge from Ohio back into West Virginia, right? Because we're the way we would go. You'd go into Ohio for a little, right? Go through Gallipolis. And then it's absolutely idyllic town. Like stuck in town, small time America, classic Main Street to this day. That's the post office there. So opposite the post office on that side street is the historic Low Hotel.
Exactly.
Where we've stayed at many times.
It's not in the frame, but.
Right. Across the street there is what is called the Coffee Grinder, but at the time it was called the Point. And it was a shop that sold different souvenirs, things like that. It was owned by a man named Bob Landrum. So when we got into town, we stopped at Bob's place, but we did some other things first, and we'll share those things with you now. So this is the Ohio River, and that's the Railroad Trestle Bridge. Now, just before this bridge, up until December 15th of 1967, there was the Silver Bridge. Named because it was painted silver. It was an I-bar suspension bridge that collapsed, and we'll get to that later. So it's just stunning. We met this lovely woman. We lost her, Carolyn Harris, a couple years ago. Carolyn lost people on the bridge. But she had the Harris Steakhouse, which is also known as the Mothman Diner. And I really miss her. She became a really, really close friend.
Absolutely. Well,
over the course of almost a decade.
She was a close friend to anyone who met her. That's the kind of person she was. She just had a giant heart. She did so much for that community, so much, just constantly helping others. That's really who she was. Greatly missed.
And we mentioned Jeff Wamsley, and of
Jeff
course, there he is
Wamsley.
with John Keel. Now, John Keel really put himself on the map, put the Mothman on the map. He spent as much time as he could in the late 60s and early 70s down visiting, interviewing people, interviewed the original witnesses like Linda Scarberry, stayed with Linda's mother, corresponded with her in Jeff Wamsley's book there. Jeff did another book with Donnie Sargent. I highly recommend both those books. Jeff has been from Gallipolis, Point Pleasant area his entire life, used to own a record store. Now he runs the museum. Very, very active in town, runs the Mothman Festival, along with some other people, co-founded it with Carolyn from the diner. And these are books, if after watching our presentation, if you're not familiar with Mothman, I would start with the Mothman Prophecies and the two books by Jeff Wamsley, and definitely see the museum when you go down there. There's us. Again, the railroad bridge, the quiet, pristine Ohio River there, and just immediately fell in love with the town.
Oh, yeah.
This is the waterfront. A little fog coming in. Oftentimes you can see there's another bridge down that way. That's the bridge that was built to replace the Silver Bridge. That really changed things for Point Pleasant. I've actually written a play based on Point Pleasant with a fictional county, and is now going to be incorporated into some novels because I fell in love, really fell in love. There are times that we almost moved there, and the circumstances just weren't right.
I'm gonna sneeze.
That's okay.
I'm trying so hard not to sneeze. There were times that we were looking into moving there. Mm-hmm.
So, but there's another side to Point Pleasant when the lights go down, right? And that's so here. Here's this photo.
Q.
And here's the same place in a little bit of rain and fog, and here's down by the water. We've walked this many times, even late at night. There's the flood wall is there, close to where the Silver Bridge was. We'll show you some pictures of investigations there. So we're really intrigued. And we go to the museum and we get a map. We stop in to see Bob, and he says, here's exactly where you should go, what you should do. Now, what's interesting about Point Pleasant with these sort of creepy photos here is that it's said that it's potentially cursed. Mm-hmm. Now, it is not. So, quick history lesson here. In October 1775, there was a battle, the Battle of Point Pleasant. And this monument, which is in Two Indy Way Park, mm-hmm. which is at the kind of the end of Point Pleasant, right on the river, and it's where the two rivers meet.
Yeah.
That's the Ohio River and the Little Kanawha River. And we think that it's such a paranormally active area, in part because of those two rivers coming together. Yeah. But this monument is there. The Battle of Point Pleasant, some people claim that is the very first battle of the Revolutionary War. Some historians will dispute that. Some historians say, yeah, that's reasonable. Either way, this is what we have here. So Chief Cornstalk, he's a Shawnee. He brings together the Delaware, the Mingo, and some other tribes into a confederacy because the pioneers are coming in. And we see this all over the mid-Ohio Valley, mm-hmm. Southwest Pennsylvania, here in Ohio, in West Virginia, highly contested land, sometimes vicious slaughters, activity on both sides. Mm-hmm. And the land remembers these things. Yeah. It really does. So it is said that, fast forward, you see that Cornstalk died in 1777. And he was at Fort Randolph. There's a replica of Fort Randolph to this day in Point Pleasant. He and his son surrendered. You'll read in some accounts, I was just reading in Gray Barker Silver Bridge today, that they were taken in forcefully. They weren't. They went in, they surrendered, they wanted to talk. Anyway, they busted into their room and they killed both of them. Mm-hmm. So the idea that Cornstalk had a chance to utter a curse that would curse this land for hundreds of years, the origin of that is actually a play from the 1800s. So it is a place that a lot has happened to. The floods, the Silver Bridge collapse, the Mothman, the town almost died. And the Mothman, through the festival, through Bob's statue, really resurrected it. Yeah. So it's a very interesting place. Why I wrote the play, why I'm putting it in the novels, just a very, very interesting place. So anyway, we're told that we need to go to what is called the McClintock Wildlife Management Area. It's a super fun site
Hmm.
because it's also known as the TNT area. So during World War II, these bunkers called igloos, and we're going to show you those in just a little bit, were used to store TNT, and there were manufacturing plants, North Plant and South Plant, um, that manufactured the TNT. So we get onto Route 62. We drive out of town. It's an absolutely beautiful day. As you can see, the sky is blue, blue, blue. Now, this is a winter shot. This is the only one that I could find in our personal files. We didn't take any pictures of this that day, but you kind of park, you cross a guardrail, which really is sort of a threshold of the
It is.
liminal zone
It really is.
into another world. It really is. But you can see it's beautiful. It's serene. The sky was absolutely blue. Everything was green, but it was quiet.
It was
No sound.
It was very quiet. And as Joey mentioned, it was a gorgeous, sunny day, sunny afternoon. We had left the point after talking to Bob at about 2:30 in the afternoon, which becomes relevant later. But
Right.
that's what time it was.
About a 15-minute
It's
drive
about a
down there.
15-minute drive from downtown Point Pleasant out to this part of the TNT area. Now, there are different locations where people go and explore, but where we were particularly where we call them igloos 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
That's what we call them. But anyway, that's where
So
we
a
were.
little overgrown. It's the height of summer. And we couldn't get near that first igloo.
No.
Just a feeling of fear. What Keel called the zone of fear. Just an area where it's frightening, even in the daylight. You're perfectly safe. Where you're not that deep into the woods. I mean, you can still see the car
Oh, at the
parked.
first igloo, you're really not in the woods at
No,
all. No.
no, it's a very short walk, and yet it was all we could do to, like, the door was open, to get an arm in there and snap a couple of pictures. So just to familiarize you with the igloos, these are pictures from over the years. This is a one in a completely different area,
Right.
but it gives you a good idea of the dome shape. And then let's see what we have here. This is looking out from an igloo out onto where igloo 1, 2, and 3 are. So this is one of those three
Hmm.
that we took at some point. Um, Here's one. It's got an interesting light anomaly.
Yeah. Not
Uh,
uncommon. And
no, not at all.
in fact, when we were in the point talking to Bob, who drew this map for us and said, "No, here's where you want to go," he was showing us photos that people had taken inside the igloos with a lot of different photo anomalies. And he had even said to us, if you get any weird photo anomalies, I guess by definition, if it's an anomaly, it's weird, but bring it back and show me. So
Right. So, and we did wind up back.
we did wind up going back, but not for that reason. In fact, this photo wasn't taken that day
No,
either.
right. These are just shots of, and here's another area again in wintertime. Um, but all things were stored here, and there's some still remnants, and still, but not particularly creepy or desolate or anything
Hmm.
like that. Really not.
Depending on, again, it's a totally different
Right.
story when the sun goes down.
Right. So we have been there sometimes very, very late at night, many, many times. And we'll show you some pictures from those visits later in the presentation. So we try to make it to the second igloo, don't even make it. And that hole between the first igloo and the second igloo, a solar plexus spike for me, making me feel nauseous. People would make me sort of demonstrate that for them.
Hmm.
It was like a human EMF meter, and there was something weird until one of the igloos further down exploded many years ago. Some bad ammunition or something that was being
Old
ordnance,
dynamite or something.
yeah, got wet and became unstable, and it changed.
Hmm.
So I don't have that anymore, which is interesting. And there's some other things going on there too as well. So we get back into the car. We were there for all of 15 minutes. Now we leave a bundle of sage. We bought some from Bob. Bob says that it's an old Indian burial ground. There's certainly a lot of roots there for the Native American Shawnee, Mingo, Delaware, so on, as we told you about. So we leave the shade. We leave the sage. We get back in the car and we're driving back on 62 and just trying to process this.
Yeah, we were basically driving back and talking like, wow, that was kind of weird. It was so beautiful out there, but yet we both felt like we were being watched, like intently being watched. And so we were just kind of talking about that. And at that moment,
Yeah, we just we look in the road and we look at each other and we say, "Did you see that?"
Mm-hmm.
And we say it both at the same time. And I think if we hadn't both said it at the same time, maybe none of this would have gone forward the way it's unfolded that we're going to share tonight. We might have just
We
kept it
might
to
have
ourselves.
yeah, we may have dismissed it.
So again, let's see here. And I think it's the next. So now this becomes interesting because we decided not to describe it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we got back to town and everything's pretty much closed, like all the shops, because we do wind up going to a restaurant where we
drew
draw
these.
these. But so we go back to the point. I told you Bob Landrum's place because he said if you see anything weird, let us know. So we wanted to let him know. So we knock on the door, and that's where we realized what's 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Over. Now I don't know if it was too. I always.
That's what I have here in my notes here. 2 hours and 45 minutes of lost time.
It could be. I always forget to like actually sit down and do the math. I know that we left at 2:30, and it was after 5 when we got back.
Right. So basically, we just tell Bob, look, we were driving on 62. I see this thing that looks like a man in a neoprene wetsuit being shot out of a cannon across the road, and it like blinks out of existence on the side of the road. You chime in and you say, no. It was more like a deer springing, but I mean, humanoid shape, but sprung like a deer and sort of the same thing.
Moved like a deer, but looked humanoid, like a bipedal sort of figure that was dark gray in color, but leapt in a single bound from the edge of the left side of the road in one bound across to the right side. And we both, well, we'll talk about that.
And it was so dark against the blue sky. It was so clear.
Yep.
So we decide. So Bob says, "Well, give me your card because I know some paranormal researchers, and I want to tell them about this, and maybe they'll get in touch with you." So we go to the restaurant, pull some paper out of a little notepad. We each draw, and even though we described it completely different to Bob, the pictures are almost identical. This has always stunned me.
Well, this really stunned both. So neither one of us, of course, described it to each other, and we both captured it midair, which is interesting. Obviously, how are she going to draw a road? But we were seeing two fields of corn, one on the left side, one on the right, and we both only drew the one on the right.
Right, and the shapes are very similar. So this gets interesting, but not until really 11 years later. So we kind of not put it out of our heads, but we go home. We've had a wonderful weekend. We've had a terrific time. And it was about a month and a half later, we're coming out of the Walmart, I remember, outside of Morgantown, West Virginia. And my phone rings. And it's paranormal investigator John Frick. And he's very interested in the story. He and his brother Tim both. And they want to know, could they meet us down there to kind of go through it all? And they want to make some other phone calls and have some other people come. So sure enough, that November of 2009, we're there. So here we are standing in the cornfield to the right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what becomes really interesting is there's no cornfield to the left.
No, but we both remembered seeing it.
We remembered seeing it, but there's a house there. And the house has obviously been there for 20 some odd years. And what's also interesting is that there's a copse of trees right near the house.
Mm-hmm.
Rosemary Ellen Guiley was with us, who became a dear friend and mentor. We lost her just last year. And Steve Ward, well-known paranormal investigator, who's also presenting virtually for the Van Meter Festival. Steve's been a long-time colleague of ours going back to this November of 2009.
This is
and right across from it, and this is a picture later when we went back, the cornfield was then gone, so this is several years later, but there's the American, let me get this right here, American Electric Power Plant. So you got the copse of trees, you have this power plant, and you have this possible portal lane where this thing made itself seen to us. So very interesting. That is, now I remembered a gas station. I remembered it distinctly. It had colorful triangular flags all around it, like it was celebrating something special. I remember the pumps, the gas station. There has never been a gas station there
Not like
matching
the
that
no, not like the
description.
one you
No,
described.
between there and back into town, that was an anomaly. The 2 hours and 45 minutes of missing time,
Mhm.
that was a long time anomaly. What happened during that time? And it felt, just regardless, not knowing that we had lost those 2 hours and 45 minutes, the trip that day from the TNT area back into town just felt so long compared to now, probably the dozens of times that we've made that trip since. So, what do we do with all of this information? Not much. I mean, our story was in a bunch of books. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, other people's books. We were interviewed by lots of people, interviewed for some television shows. People want to know, was it the Mothman? It wasn't the Mothman. It didn't
It
have
didn't have
wings.
wings. It didn't have any of the features described by witnesses who've seen the Mothman. So we definitely don't think that's what it was.
Right. And so I have always misremembered, even though it was this major event, I always thought it was the weekend of August 15th, but it was really the weekend of, it was actually the actual day that we did it was August 21st. So I have an opportunity. We had done a radio show probably 6 or 8 months ago, and someone said you really should get some regression hypnosis. Try to figure out what happened to that 2 hours and 45 minutes. So we set up a regression hypnosis session for myself, and it happens to fall on the day 11 years prior, which is
Which,
weird.
yeah, which is in and of itself is very strange. Didn't feel like a coincidence. But
No,
I wanted to take a step back just for a second and talk about, like, I can never remember the exact amount of the missing time, and you always get the date confused.
right,
And that's a pretty common thing that happens to experiencers. They either the details are either, well, one of the big things that happens a lot is something that should seem at the time really extraordinary. They don't know how to respond to, or they respond in an inappropriate way, or also that details become a little fuzzy
right.
afterwards. So
Not to mention the fact that even though we drew the same exact thing, we always described it two completely different ways.
yeah.
So this becomes now, I think, incredibly interesting. This is the first time that we are, for any audience at all. We've mentioned it on our show, Into the Outer Realms. We've mentioned it on some other things, but we're basically going to take you through the regression hypnosis to account for that time, at least from my perspective. Some of them are shared experiences, supposedly, but you've yet to have the opportunity to do the
Hmm.
regression hypnosis. So we don't know. We've sent the tapes. It's about 42 minutes from the induction to taking me out of it. It's been very helpful because you are certified now in hypnosis. So that was helpful. But we also sent it to several colleagues along with some pictures, some different things that we're going to share with you. So it becomes clear right away. And I believe that I brought up what I have next. Oh, that's the American um uh again. Talk about things going out
I
of
know.
your mind.
I
It is the
know.
oddest thing.
It's
The
a
American
common
Electric
it's a
Power
common
Plant. American
phenomenon that
Electric Power Plant.
happens.
Um so as we're approaching it, my heart is beginning to race. We're right back in it. The hypnotist started in Bob's place, took us through the drive and all. We get here, my heart is racing, my solar plexus is very active, and I just keep talking about how weird it is. It's weird. It's so weird here. I don't get it. It's beautiful, but it's quiet, but I feel like someone's watching me. I do recall that I barely get an arm inside. The door was open that day. Barely get and I don't even think those pictures, we don't have them, so I don't even think we got anything. It's so dark in there.
Yeah, I don't think they
Um,
turned out.
but I see this thing, or I sense it near the igloo. Now, I remember when we put down the sage, we felt that day that there was something in the woods, but
Well, we
assumed, nothing paranormal.
right.
but
I
just an
just
odd
remember
feeling that there
feeling
was something in
watched.
the woods. And I recall that it's black, it's got legs like a satyr, it's got horns and antlers, and it's got these very prevalent, almost like owl-like eyes. And it's looking at us, and then it begins to retreat deeper and deeper into the woods. Um, it's super old. It's been there in that area for a very, very long time, tied to the land somehow. And I realize under hypnosis that this is the thing that we saw over the road. This is what it actually looked like. And I realized just Tanya had remembered correctly, and I didn't, which I think becomes very ironic as this whole thing unfolds. But with those sort of satyr-like legs, those deer-like legs, your description of it. Now it could be that I didn't see it as soon as you did, so I saw it over the road, which
Right.
made me feel like it was more launched, and you saw it sooner. But Spring-Heeled Jack, the old strange anomaly of this thing that people saw, it was kind of like that. But remembering very clearly that it just got to the edge of that cornfield, completely blinked out. It didn't go into the corn. Just as it hit the threshold of that corn, it was gone. Right here, here's where it begins to get extremely weird, folks. Um, the car begins to spin around while we're inside it, like we're in some kind of kaleidoscope. So the colors are weird, things are odd, like we're caught in a vortex or a tornado. And I say that we close our eyes to keep from throwing up. Now, were we actually in the car, or were we already transported out into? Don't really know. Um, but it's complete darkness. And the hypnotist asked me, um, can you see, is it nighttime? No, no, no. This is a complete blackness. It's a complete absence of light. It's like in a film where someone winds up in some place and they don't know where they are, and it's black, 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 and you're hearing some sounds, and suddenly their eyes open and we see what they see. It was very much like that. And what I see, believe it or not, is this red barn with white trim, just out of a movie, just idyllic. It's beautiful, it's pristine, and it does not look real. It looks like a Technicolor movie set. There are no there's no animals, there's no cars, there's no activity. There's this beautiful barn, 2-story with the loft, with the white trim, the X's, all that classic stuff, which becomes important later. So we get out of the car and we're looking at this barn. I say we because I sense that you're still there at this point.
Mhm.
But I notice that in my peripheral vision, or if I look at all to the right or the left, it's just that black, black, blackness. It's only when I look straight ahead do I see this. The image comes in my head of there was a thing. It was red, and you put it up when you were a kid, and you would put these
Oh,
fill
the
things and advance
Viewmaster.
them, like a
The
ViewMaster kind
Viewmaster.
of thing,
Hmm.
where sometimes the edges were fuzzy. Or if you I had another little TV thing where you put this strip in of images and you played a 45 record, and same kind of thing out of the field, where the light wasn't directly illuminating it. It was fuzzy and sometimes really dark.
Well, what it makes me think of is almost like being in a movie theater, in a black movie theater, looking at the movie screen. But what if it was like more holographic? I don't
Hmm.
know, just like being on a holodeck or something.
That would
I don't know.
work
That's
too.
what it made me think of.
So suddenly, just past the barn is this metallic, again, just pristine, beautiful, like dairy tower, just sort of appears. Then I realize that we're not alone. So this being is with us that I described, and from around us, and again, I know she's there to my side at this point, come these spindly thin arms, with basically 3 fingers on a hand, and at the ends of the fingers, it's very bulbous, almost like olives when we were kids. I don't know if you ever did that, but on holidays we would
Every
take
kid
black
did
olives and we
that.
put it on our fingers, and it kind of looked like that. And there were 5 of these beings, and their arms were sort of wrapping around me, not in a threatening way. I didn't feel any pressure, but they were there. So we begin to walk. And as we're walking, we notice that the space is pretty. It's outdoors. There's split rail fence. There's some of my favorite flowers, you know, sunflowers and those kinds of things, these beautiful yellow flowers, black-eyed Susans. But I'm noticing, man, this is a controlled environment. This is like a set. It's pristine. Nothing's out of whack. There's not a blade out of there's not a blade of grass that's moved around, anything like that. And it's like, it reminds me of the yellow brick road in the Wizard of Oz, where they're all gathered together now, and the scarecrow, does he have a gun, does he not have a gun, you know,
like
all
the
of that as
Mandela
they're
effect?
coming, as they're coming towards the apple trees. But it's in this much more high tech technicolor of what that looks like with the split rail fence and all that. And then there's more woods, and we're just walking. um we get the sense that this is designed to keep me occupied. I don't know that Tanya is with me anymore now. So then they add a bridge with a babbling brook. Like, oh, what other pristine, beautiful things would you like to see out in the woods? Oh, how about a bridge with a babbling brook underneath? And these beings are starting to get annoyed with me because I'm not investing in the fantasy. My concentration isn't completely held. I'm not believing it, and they're getting annoyed, and I'm getting the sense that they just want me to enjoy it and stop questioning. Now, in my own life, there's lots of parallels with that. Just kind of relax and enjoy the ride, man, you know, especially when I was younger. Then suddenly there's a shift, and we're in this disc-shaped object. And again, it's spinning, it's making me nauseous. It's like being centrifuged. It's moving, spinning at a very, very, very high rate of speed. Sort of like a bookend to the car, except it's not the car anymore. It's
Mhm.
this disc-shaped thing. It starts to slow down, and as it slows down, it tilts, as if the motion somehow keeps it level, and when it doesn't, it tilts. That's when I see this gas station. There it is. So there's um, white, red pumps, gas pumps, you know, old style, I would say 50s, 60s style. The triangles, blue, yellow, red, green, white, repeated over and over again. Blue, yellow, red, green, white, all the way around on these poles. And it takes a little bit for the sign to come in clear, but it's Sonny's Garage, Sonny apostrophe S in script. It's red. The building is white, kind of matches the white and red of the pumps. This is super, super interesting as researchers, as well as, you know, personally for me.
Mhm.
When I was in middle school, it was my dream, it was my passion, unwavering, that I wanted to be an auto mechanic. Not only be an auto mechanic, but I wanted to own my own garage. Now, my nickname isn't Sonny. I have a junior. Nobody ever really called me Sonny, but
Mhm.
here it is. It's this Sonny's Garage, which is kind of interesting and very idyllic in the small town, and exactly what I wanted my life to be. And then when I was in 8th grade, I took this aptitude test and I scored really high on it. And there was this conference of all these panicked guidance counselors who call me in and say, "We understand you want to be an auto mechanic." And I said, "Yeah, I love cars. I love old cars. I love working on cars. It's my favorite thing to do with my dad is work on the cars on Saturday morning." And they say, "That is not for you. You are smart and you are supposed to go to college. Put this out of your mind. Don't waste your life."
Which is crazy to
It
me
is. I
because
hate
I
it.
think you have to be pretty darn smart to know how to work on cars.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal, and it's really affected as a teacher, it's really affected my approach with students. I'm sort of the Socrates. I have a painting of Socrates right before he reads the hemlock in my office, because it's not up to us to tell people what they should be.
Right.
So what that passion is. But, you know, it led me on the road I'm in. So suddenly we're back in the car, but the car is not solid. It's transparent. It's like Wonder Woman's
I was
airplane
gonna
or
say it's
something.
like Wonder Woman's car.
I can see the transmission. And in thinking about this and talking to people in the past 2 or 3 weeks, that's perfect. here's a kid. He wanted to be a mechanic. We showed him the garage. He didn't go for it fully, but he was kind of hooked. So let's show him how a car works in this transparent car with the transmission and the engine and all this stuff happening. It's very interesting. As we get nearer and nearer and nearer into town, the car begins to solidify. But during the hypnosis, but during the regression, I realized that they were curious as to why we were tapped into them. Why did we sense this being next to this igloo here? Then they decided to test us more. So they said, okay, let's see if it'll see us. So when it went back into the woods, it went into the woods and somehow made its way to that area. And I'm saying, like, it could have just closed its eyes and was there waiting. Like, I don't know. I'm putting a mundane explanation on how these things travel. But it blinks out and then it's like, oh, it could see us. Let's see really how these minds work. Let's see what's going on here. And so we were definitely like subjected to some psychological tests, is my feeling. We're taken to another dimension, which accounts for the missing time. Obviously, because the car was not physically spinning, that's not possible. And the other things that were happening and all of that. And then I just repeat over and over again, not a good candidate, not a good candidate, not a good candidate. No further tests. He notices, remembers too much, not a good candidate. Now, the gas station was supposed to keep me occupied while Tanya was being subjected to a set of tests. And when we get that information, we will go public with it.
Yeah, I'm hoping in maybe October I might have an opportunity to get regressed.
Good.
So we'll see.
The transparent car was meant to keep my attention and fascinate me too. And the regression therapist said to me, was Tanya a good candidate? And my feeling was that she was. Now, Tanya is a psychic medium, a Reiki master, an energy healer, yoga instructor, massage therapist, all that kind of stuff. You do communicate with the deceased, cross people over, see ghosts, spirits, other entities. So that kind of makes sense.
And I'm also a lifelong experiencer, and like many lifelong experiencers, I've had the whole gamut of high strangeness, paranormal, encounters, paranormal experiences, haunted houses, all of it.
Right. So looking at this now, putting our paranormal investigator hats on again, it recalls to mind that in 1978, there was a case, I believe in Argentina, and it was a young man named Juan Perez. He was only 12 years old, had experience with a ship, so many other things. His horse was touched and the horse died, and he now lives a very solitary life. There's an outstanding documentary about him that you can find on Amazon and other places. And unfortunately, the name of it is escaping me, but it's about Juan Perez and his experience in Argentina with a UFO. Well, the famous French ufologist, Jacques Vallée, got involved with the case fairly early on. And Jacques Vallée, in this documentary, he says that he has a feeling that the beings come from a parallel dimension, and that they use a combination of a contactee's own mental images and their own technology and abilities to put on a display. That certainly seems to fit with my experience.
It fits with your experience and so many other people who have reported contactee or abductee experiences. Sometimes they just range into the completely bizarre, but yet with a combination of mundane things like barns and whatever. So it's very consistent.
Right. Now, as we start to get towards town, the car begins to solidify. We start to notice landmarks, and we sort of come out of that liminal test zone and get into a place more in this solid reality here that we're in. You're beside me. We recognize everything. And then that kind of loops back to when we went back into town, realized we lost the time, went to Bob Landrum. We should say that we lost Bob 3 or 4 years ago as well. Mm-hmm. Bob also passed away. Yeah. So after the regression hypnosis, we get home, processing it all, and we wound up on our back deck. And we are sitting on our back deck, and just beyond our wood line in the back of our house is woods. We see smoke, which concerns us. Something's on fire. We follow it back, and we wind up on our neighbor's property. And there's a lot of trees and woods that separate the two properties. We've never really been over there. It's changed hands several times since we've been here. Don't really know these new neighbors yet, but turns out that they were cleaning some brush. So I had learned that because I went around, knocked on the front door, and said, "I think there's something burning on the back of your property." Uh, when I'm leaving, I see a shed, a miniature barn on their property that I've never seen before in the over 2 years that we've been here. And it is exactly that red with the white trim in every way, just in shed size rather than barn size. Wow, isn't that odd? So I snap a picture of it, which we're not going to share with you because it's our neighbor's shed, it's our neighbor's property. I come inside, I'm checking my phone, I'm going through social media, and I click on Facebook, and what immediately comes up is a digitally enhanced rendering of a field with flowers and split rail fence, and it is exactly like the path that we were walking down. So, okay, here's two very clear synchronicities, two very clear messages to pay attention to what's going on. So we decide, as we mentioned earlier, that we're going to send the recording to several colleagues. So we sent it to 4 or 5 colleagues. My college roommate, Chuck Regan, who does book covers, our show posters, logo for our theater company, just about everything we've done. He does the logos and covers for our books, Watch Out for the Hallway, and our new book, Roommates from Beyond, How to Live in a Haunted Home, which is coming out next month. Did the cover for that. And I say, you know what, Chuck? Last year, you were on Amy Allen's show, Dead Files, sketching for her. It was a case that took place around King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, around that area there, Eastern PA. I'm going to send you this audio recording. If you feel, go ahead and sketch. And Chuck sends us several days later. Oh, I'm trying to get back into the screen here. Oh, now, this was the closest thing that I thought of. I've been fascinated with this. This is the Trois Frères cave paintings in France. And this is called the Sorcerer, sort of maybe an elk shaman kind of thing. And I was thinking, wow, it's kind of like this. I kept that to myself. But I was fascinated with this. And after the hypnosis regression, I said, wow, it was kind of like that thing.
The cave painting.
Right. Kind of like that cave painting that I've been fascinated with in past life cards. And anytime it comes up, I'm really drawn to it. And here is what Chuck sends, which is just, we'll just take a second to look at that. He also has the fingers there. They're a little longer. And the bulbs were a little rounder and more pronounced, but pretty close. But there is that thing. And well, first of all, the eyes are riveting. So when he first sent it, I just couldn't see. I'm already getting, it's weird. Whenever I see it, I get a little weird. I get a little zoned, but it's those eyes. I think the eyes, one of our colleagues said, do you think this is what that being really looks like? And I absolutely do not think that's what this being looks like. I think it was pulling that image of the cave thing from my mind. I think it was kind of close. But this feels like a deer, a goat. It does have this weird owl thing that I think because of in here, this top part and the eyes, the way they are. And I think these were layered. Like for some reason, you usually have screen memories, right? Whitley Strieber talks about them in Communion. The owls are not what they seem, so on and so forth. They seem to have thrown the whole gamut here. And when you go back, that long beard there is really interested. That pointed face to me, and of course, what could be interpreted as a satyr, the legs, but also your deer and leaping.
Right. And really for the figure that I saw, I'll go back to that cave painting for a second. The figure that I saw well, we both saw the same figure, but the way that I saw the figure leap across the road, it would have had to have had hind legs like that
Right.
for the way that it catapult, for lack of a better way to say it, like leapt into the air, and yeah,
Right.
it moved like a deer. It wasn't, but that's how it moved.
Right. So just leave that up there for a
Mhm.
second. So that's a lot to process.
Mhm.
That is certainly hypnotic.
The eyes, definitely, and it almost, with the eyes, even has that gray alien sort of quality there to
A
the
little bit,
eyes.
it does. I think that the eyes are real, oftentimes, you
Mhm.
know. So you look at black-eyed kids, that whole
Mhm.
phenomena.
Mhm.
There's that thing that's the real thing that everything is
The
sort of
real essence. Well, I mean,
right,
they say the eyes are the window to the soul. So, yeah, when
right.
you're looking into the eyes, you're looking into the essence of
So we've gotten, as
the
people,
being.
people have looked at this sketch, fascinating, scary, creepy, entrancing. Um, yeah, certainly did its job, right?
Hmm.
So that now 11 years ago, a little more than 11 years ago, 11 years in a month, really set us on our path. Working with Rosemary for a decade, becoming very close with Steve with the Fricks, and so we're going to take you to kind of wrap up this presentation. We're going to take you through some of our other experiences in the TNT area in a more general sense, and go with some photos here. But here's a series of investigations. This is one of our very close colleagues, Devin McGuigan, using dowsing rods, our set of dowsing rods,
Hmm.
yours most specifically, in the igloo. So as you can see the igloos, the concrete pad, and then the blocks of cement, and they've been used for hangouts. Been used, I think, for some kind of nefarious stuff, but dark magic and things. We found some evidence of
Occult
that, and there's been
magic. Hmm.
rumors of that, and they're pretty well graffitied. That's a theme that you're going to see. So looking for communication there. Um, Here's Emily Mittermeier, who's another close colleague of ours, trying to communicate. You and Emily are both sensitive. You're a psychic medium. She's a sensitive, with a lot of skills herself.
Absolutely.
Some equipment there down at the bottom that we're running, and again, you can see the graffiti. Um, Here's another investigation. This was, I think, before the Mothman Festival, the night before it officially started, I think, in 2018.
Hmm.
That's Eric Vassbinder, who we've done a bunch of multimedia projects with. This is pretty late at night down there. That was the night with the what was it, a goose or a duck or that followed us?
I think it was a duck.
Yeah, that was pretty
How can
interesting.
I not remember that?
There's Rosemary Ellen Guiley there to the right. This is probably one of our November pilgrimages. Although
Yeah.
we're so bundled up,
I think,
we could have gone later. I think there were one year we went in December, I think, again, or maybe in January.
I don't know,
Um,
this might have been when we went on 11/11 at 11/11.
maybe, maybe it was, and I was just unseasonably cold. There's Steve Ward and there's John Frick. So that's Rosemary dubbed this group, including John's brother Tim, the Mothman Irregulars,
Hmm.
for all these investigations that we did over the years. And here's John. And again, we're trying to do some communication, and it's just fascinating, all that graffiti.
Hmm.
Some of it's beautiful, some of it's kind of scatological and just kind of nasty. But a weird kind of combination of what the igloos have become for so many
Right.
different people.
Right.
Chip Coffey's had some psychic experiences in there. Other people have, and we really have had some bizarre things, really bizarre EVPs
Yep.
of almost sounding like creatures. We have another colleague who felt something go through him that really kind of messed him up for several days.
Yeah.
Felt like it passed through him. And then really it's been the last couple years where the energy has changed. So it doesn't light me up between the first and second igloos, but we encounter these black masses. But you and Rosemary Ellen Guiley, do you remember the year when you saw the shadow person down there one night?
I don't, I'd have to look at my notes off the top of my head. I don't remember the exact year, but it was probably around 2010, 2011.
Mm-hmm.
And we were walking back from the igloos back toward that guardrail that you talked about, back toward where we parked the cars. And Rosemary and I both started to sense a presence in the woods, and it was sort of coming parallel with us, and it was this black mass that we were both picking up psychically. We weren't seeing it with our eyes, but it followed us all the way to the guardrail, and then retreated back into the woods.
Now I'm going to put you a little here on the spot. Can we completely discount the possibility that maybe it was that same thing that you and I encountered?
I mean, I can't discount the possibility, but the sensation that we had that first day was just a sensation of being watched. It's just that sort of weird feeling that you have, a little bit unsettling because you're not sure who's watching you. But this was, I'd say, more ominous, more, yeah.
Evil?
It didn't, I was just going to say maybe malevolent. I don't know that I'd go as far as to say evil, but darker. Certainly a darker quality to the energy and the vibe of that presence than now. Of course, like we talked about, the day and the night are completely different, and this was at night versus our first visit in the day. But I actually tend to think that first mass, that black mass, shadow-like being that followed us back to the guardrail, if anything, is more connected to the later things, the black masses that we have encountered.
Right. Well, very good. I thought it was worth asking. So in 2018, we had an experience. I think it was not during the festival. It was prior to the festival. We had gone down for a visit. We tried to go down 2 or 3 times a year. And we see this black mass down along the row of the igloos, way, way past, probably even with maybe igloo 7 somewhere around there. And it's shimmering and it's morphing. It's up in the treetops. It was you, myself, Emily, and Devin. And it was coming towards us. When we turned and walked towards the guardrail to exit the TNT, it would stop. And when we would turn back to look at it, it would begin to move again. And that went on for several minutes till we were finally out of the TNT area.
That felt even more dark and malevolent than the one that Rosemary and I were both picking up psychically. That one felt dark. This one, but that one felt dark, but I didn't feel, and it could have been too, because there was, I don't know, there was a lot of us there. Rosemary was there. She wasn't, freaking out. I didn't feel like I can't wait to get out of here. I was more like curious, like, wow, this is really interesting. What is this? With the one that you just described, the one that was kind of shimmering, I could not wait to get out of there. And in fact, have had no interest, and I've been going there for years. I've had no interest in returning since. I was so unsettled by the energy and the sense of malevolence coming off of that, whatever it was, that I have not gone back since.
And when they're sentient, that's even scarier. It would follow, it would stop, it would follow, it would stop.
I detected a real intent to harm rolling off of it.
So we go back to the Mothman Festival last year. So you and I had presented in 2018. Steve and I were presenting last year. Plus we had a table. And we're all there. And it was kind of, that Saturday was a good day, but it was a weird day. So a woman approached our table, was telling us about a vortex in their town. It's hurting people. It's giving people cancer, what to do. And at one point you look at me and you look scared out of your mind. So we're sitting right next to each other and the woman's across the table. And I look over, I think I probably either gave some advice and of course looked at you for confirmation or not, like we do working as a team. And you get this look on your face of complete horror because
I think I almost tipped my chair over, actually. I was so startled because your eyes were just red, like in the Mothman picture behind me, like that. kind of red. And I've never, obviously, Joey's eyes are brown. I've never seen his eyes just immediately shift to red like that. I've never seen it since, thank goodness.
Mm-mm.
But his irises were just completely like blood red for a split second. Like I said, I think I almost tipped my chair over. Joey thought I was like, "What's the matter with you?"
It was
And
such a terrified look on
mhm.
your face. So fast forward, we go back to the hotel. Everybody cleans up. We're going to get some dinner. And we decide that we're going to go out to the TNT area, which is typical for Saturday night of the festival. And you beg out.
I
You
didn't want
say,
to
no way,
go.
I'm not going.
No, not after the feelings I was getting off of the. Yeah.
So several weird things happened. Uh, One was that I had the PSB11 Spirit Box, which is what we prefer and we've used for years. It spontaneously switches on, which it should not do. It has a toggle switch to turn it on, and then you have to push some other buttons to really get it going. It comes on, and we start to hear voices. As a matter of fact, we start to hear voices coming out of it. Where is that coming from? And I realized that the box has spontaneously switched on. It was on a long string. No way it could have switched on. And we hear these layered angelic voices. We're here with you. Now, by that time, I had switched on the digital recorder. So we have it. That's been interesting. A lot of people have listened to it. It's oddly similar to the 5-tone. It's only 4 tones, but it's oddly similar to Close Encounters, which is really kind of weird. Um, and multi-layered voices we've never gotten. We've had multiple voices speaking at once, but not like an angelic choir kind of sounding thing.
Right.
And we played it for the husband of someone we were very close with. We didn't tell him anything about it. He listened to it and he said, "That's my wife's voice," which was very, very interesting in this layer of what sounds like angelic voices. He very clearly heard his wife's voice in there. We get some photos. We always take lots of photos. Um, there's Devin McGuigan to the extreme left in the foreground. There's our friend Matt Burrell from Australia. There's me. I have no face. It's just a black obliterated. Now there are no shadows. There's John Frick there. There's Matt. No one else. Nothing. There's a gentleman in that hat there that was part of the group that I don't know personally, so I don't know his name. But if you could take a screenshot or whatever you want to do with that, we've sent it to a lot of photographic experts and colleagues, and my face is just obliterated. There's just a black
Which makes me
bar over my face.
wonder, what was really attaching itself to you at that time between the eyes and the
Right.
blacked out face.
Right. And we're just past the third igloo here, would you say?
I wasn't there, so I'm not sure where you were
Right.
when you took
Okay.
this.
Yeah. So we're coming to the end of the presentation here, and we just we'll show you a couple other places that we've. There's Matt Burrell again, who was so wonderful to have someone come in from Australia because he's a paranormal researcher and he's heard of Mothman, and he comes into town. We meet him. We've had some great experiences with Matt this last several years.
We've met so many amazing people just investigating in Point Pleasant.
We really have. And we should say, we mentioned that we've been interviewed for TV shows. None of them have picked up our story because it has a happy ending.
Yeah. We've been interviewed by TV shows. We haven't
right.
been
The producers
on
are right. They even
shows.
borrowed our story for a show and appended it as the first act of someone else's story, which was very surreal.
Because we have a happy ending.
Because we do, and we believe that this was all meant to be. So very interesting. But yet some dark experiences because this is just that's just unsettling and weird.
Well, and so were your eyes. It was terrifying, like just to look and see somebody's eyes.
So we mentioned the North Power Plant. This is where it was. And in 1966, November, the middle of the month, the Mallets and the Scarberries are out in Linda Scarberry's husband Roger's 57 Chevy. And they're kind of joyriding. They're just being kids. Even though they're married, they're still pretty young. They're in their late teens, very early 20s. And they see the Mothman. And one of the places that it wound up was perched on the North Power Plant, where someone else, I believe it was Marcella Bennett, also had experience where her brother threw things at it, and
Mhm.
a couple nights later. So we've investigated that. As a matter of fact, we got a message to go down there at 11 o'clock at night to meet like Indrid Cold or something like that. It was kind of ridiculous. It's a message that came through a Frank's box, through a spirit box. And sure enough, we're down there 11:30. Nothing showed up. But we still had a fabulous time that night.
Mhm.
We
That
took
was
pictures and we talked and compared notes. And so speaking of that Frank's box communication, it was down the Silver Bridge. Here's again our good friend Rosemary Ellen Guiley. This is the memorial to the Silver Bridge. 13 months to the day of the Scarberry Mallet sighting on December 15th, 1967, a week before, whatever, 10 days before Christmas. 46 people died when the Silver Bridge collapsed, all over within a couple of minutes. The cars, the twisted metal, a major, major tragedy. Still to this day, one of the biggest bridge disasters in American history. Completely changed the town.
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
Devastated it. And 13 months to the day after, now in that interim, there's MIB sightings, there's UFO sightings, there's all kinds of crazy
All manner of
weirdness.
high
And the
strangeness.
Mothman is never seen again for a
Mhm.
long time or whatever. And some people say, although this could just be lore, but people say they saw Mothman or something like the Mothman flying around or sitting on the bridge prior to its collapse, which feeds into the whole Garuda theory of it's a bird that's a harbinger, like a thunderbird. It's a harbinger of a bad event. And they really play on that in Mothman prophecies, that Mothman is a harbinger of death,
Mhm.
um, and disaster. And I just don't know about that. So we have over the years gotten some interesting communications. We don't know that it's people who were killed on the Silver Bridge or during that day, but we have gotten communications. And I think we have just one more picture of you, Steve, and Rosemary, trying to communicate on another day.
Mhm.
So that is our experiences with interdimensionals and missing time in Point Pleasant. It is an honor to bring you this presentation. Please contact us. You can contact us on Facebook on our Into the Outer Realms Facebook page. We'd be happy to hear from you with your thoughts on any of this, any questions that you may have. We'd like to thank all of the organizers of the Van Meter
Yes.
Festival. I believe we still have an invitation to speak next year. So hopefully all of this will be behind us. We'll get to meet some of you in person. In the meantime, enjoy the other presentations if you haven't done so already. We look forward to hearing from you if that's something you'd like to do. And thank you all very much.
Thank you.